In 4th grade, my dad gave me a letter. He didn't tell me what was in it, but he told me to give it to my teacher once I got to school. That letter was for my teacher to let her know that he was going to tell me he had cancer on Sunday, and just to be prepared for the mess I might be next week. On that Sunday, I went out to Costco with my mom. She let me get whatever I want, and then afterwards we went to Hallmark and I got a few Webkins and I was so happy. Instead of putting away the groceries, she had me sit down. My dad came over and he told me what was going on. He told me he had follicular lymphoma, which is a very slow growing blood cancer. He told me that his chance of survival was very high, but if he didn't, we should do all the things we can before. My dad had had chronic back pain his entire life, so we didn't really get to leave the house and do a bunch of things together. He told me that maybe we should see a movie or something. I thought it was okay, but I was heartbroken, and I wasn't really sure what to do. Within the next month, my dad got surgery. I remember him getting home and my neighbors bringing us dinner, and everything felt okay, and things seemed to be going really well. Oh, it's really surreal, like, nothing felt right. I started 5th grade and things were still going pretty well. I remember his birthday, and I still feel bad because we never actually celebrated his birthday. They kind of focused more on me. But I do remember getting him a few gifts, and he did get a slice of my cake. This is really a blur because I did block a lot of it out, and I just couldn't feel it. Like, nothing seemed right. Everything seemed out of place. I'm sorry. That winter is when everything kind of started to go downhill. I really thought everything was going well. My family thought things were going well until one morning when my mom heard heavy breathing coming from downstairs. And she wasn't quite sure what it was, and she went to go find him on the floor. I remember her yelling at us, telling us that she was going to call an ambulance for my dad and not to be scared. And she made me go to school, and that was the worst thing because I had to go in early to make up a test. So my sister took me in, and she explained to my teacher what was going on and that they might have to call me during the day because they really weren't sure what was going to happen. I got through that day. It was very hard. I cried the entire day, but I did went and picked me up to the hospital. My sister told me about how emotional my dad was. I think it was because of the medicine, but I'm not quite sure. They did an endoscopy. I think that's what it's called. Whatever they do when they stick a little camera down your throat to check out what's going on in there. They found multiple ulcers, internal bleeding, and more cancer. I still had faith. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I thought things were just going to continue to go well, and he'd do fine. But I figured out that that was the point where everything really started to go downhill. The next time, I knew he was upset about it. A few months, chemo got very intense, and I remember the morning my dad lost his hair. He had woken up and looked at his pillow, and there was just like, oh wait, people aren't gonna be able to tell, there was just this like huge ball of hair, and he went over and like he called me over and was like, Jenny, look. It was all just sitting on the pillow, and all he had were a few patches left, and he was bald. And I went to school, and I came home, and he was just completely bald. He had had my sister shave it, even everything out, so it looked horrible. It was home from school, and my dad met me at the door and walked me over to the couch, the same place where we had sat down just a little over a year ago. My dad met me at the door and he walked me over to the place we had sat about a year ago. He told me that the cancer had spread too much and it came down to 2 options. The first option was to be hospitalized 2 weeks out of every month and do chemo. It would have been very hard on him, and he would have had a 10% chance of living. The second option was to go on hospice, where people would bring all the things we need to our house. There'd be nurses watching my dad, and he'd die in peace, at home, surrounded by family. My dad told me that he went on hospice, and that he didn't know how much longer he had. There were tears in his eyes, but I couldn't cry. I felt numb. It was all too surreal. So I hugged him for a while, I got up, and then I just went on a bike ride. And I rode all the way to my friend Bella's house. And I saw her and her brother, and they had blizzards, like from Dairy Queen. But I'd never had Dairy Queen before, and I didn't want to talk to anyone. So I rode back home, and I went up to my garage, and both my sisters were there, and my mom was there. My mom started telling us the story of how her mom died, and she was upset, and both my sisters were just shocked. I had never seen my mom cry before, and it was hard to see her cry, and I remember I began to cry, because everything started to say it. And my dad went and checked on us, and then he just went back inside. I don't think any of us were really sure what to do. My dad started hospice, and we had a little place set up in our living room. So there was a little hospital bed, and we had like shower chairs, and there were nurses there, and we had oxygen tanks, and we had pretty much everything we could ever need. I went to school that week, but Tuesday night, my dad collapsed. He had just been smoking with my mom in the garage, and yeah, they came inside, and he fell on top of her, and she was on the floor, and my sister couldn't get him up, so it was up to me to go find someone. I have never ran so fast in my entire life. I sprinted out the door. I ran to my neighbor's house, and they weren't home. Well, actually they were, but the person we needed at their house wasn't home. So they told me to run over to the other neighbor's house. So I ran to their house, and I literally just barged in and told them that I needed help because my dad collapsed, and I thought he was dying. His pupils were dilated, and he wasn't answering us. So we finally got back to my house, and he helped us lift up my dad, and we were trying to talk to him, and he was just like, take him to the couch. So we took him to the couch, and he laid there. My sister, they come home, and we called his doctor. I remember my mom thanking the doctor for everything he did, and trying to get my dad to thank him. Puppies, 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 puppies.
Hey Jenny. Brendan Urie.
I just sat, because he was on the couch. I just went and fell asleep on the hospital bed, and I remember a nurse waking me up, telling me that my dad needed to lay there. So they got my dad up. He started laying there, and they told me I could lay with him, but I was terrified. I had never seen him look so awful. He was so pale, and his lips were so chapped, and he just looked lifeless. There was like the shadow of death was upon him, but I didn't know how to interpret it. I went to bed, and my family stayed up the entire night taking care of him. We had to feed him like really little spoons of Multimeal, and for water we had to get a straw and like do the thing where you put your finger on it, and then we had to drop it in his mouth every once in a while. My family was up the entire night taking care of him, and I was the only one that got any sleep. When I woke up the next day, I went downstairs, and he seemed to be pretty content. I wasn't expecting him to be alive, but he was there. He was on a lot of drugs. I went over to go talk to him, and my mom was like, look, isn't she beautiful? And he goes, come here, come closer. I came very close to him, and he grabbed my arm very lightly and said, there's a beast in the house. Don't let him get you. So I just said, okay. And walked away. Later that day, my uncle's family came over, and my uncle has a lot of kids. I think he has 16. That might not be right. 15 or 16, and about 8 of them were there. I remember just wanting to get away from my house, and it wasn't because of them. It was just because of all the people, and I couldn't stand it. My sisters ended up taking me to Kroger, and I remember I got my first razor so I could shave my legs. I was pretty excited about that. I don't know, things were going pretty well. That was a good day. I got home, and I just hung out with him for a while, and there was a pastor there. and it was Pastor Jack, and my dad had been friends with him for a while, and he was just telling him Bible stories while he was asleep. It was comforting. And later that day, my mom took me out to go funeral shopping, which was so weird. I was with both my sisters, I think my brother Samuel and my mom. We were just going to different funeral homes around town and cemeteries, and we didn't find the right one. I remember going to one, and there had been a funeral service going on while we were there. It's kind of weird. But we explained to the lady the situation and why we were shopping for it before he was even dead. And she just started crying and crying. And we went home. Oh shit, I didn't think it was through. Okay. Sorry. And I got home, and my house was still crowded, and my neighbors were there, and everyone. Oh my god, there were so many people. My friend Bella ended up coming over, and she brought me brownies and these little headbands that were duct tape, and they had flowers on them, and oh, I thought they were so cool. That really made my night. And then later that night, my friends Rick and Mallory and Lucy came over. They brought me a little necklace and a gigantic teddy bear, and I was so happy. After that, I put everything in my room, and I went downstairs, and we were having pizza dinner, because, I don't know. The lady gave my dad medicine, and she said that he wouldn't be able to talk anymore, but he could still hear what we were saying, so we might want to go talk to him. Okay. So I went over, and I just talked to him, and I was holding his hand and just telling him I loved him, and he didn't say anything, but he couldn't. I went back over to finish my pizza, and my mom said that we should probably be around him, because it was fine. My whole family was surrounding him, and they were all in this big prayer circle, and I was right by his head, and I just closed my eyes, and we did. I remember my uncle was telling us, he's gone. Puppies. I just remember falling to the floor. I couldn't hold it together. Yeah. Yeah. The next day and got ready for the funeral. I'd gone shopping with my neighbor and her mom to go get a dress, and I really, really liked it, so I was excited to wear that. I got to the funeral home, actually it was a church. I got to the church, and I saw my best friend there, and it was a big church. We were just running around, and it was so much fun. We were just trying to find our way around, and get some donuts. We were good. And there was an hour of visitation before the funeral actually began. Before the funeral started, they took my family into a room and explained what we had to do. And, food. They had told us that we needed to walk with him down the aisle and then sit down front row. So, we got up, walked down. I made a lot of awkward eye contact with people, and they all looked so sad, and I didn't know what to do, because I couldn't cry, no matter how hard I tried. I just couldn't feel anything. I went and sat down, and they told stories, like how he went to Spain with 10 cents in his pocket. And just what a good person he was, because he did everything. After the service, I remember I still wasn't upset, and I rode with my best friend all the way to the cemetery. At the cemetery, everyone just kind of stood around, and they had a little tent, and I sat down, and they just kind of lowered him in. I didn't really know what to do. I was lost. But I remember seeing someone throw a flower in, so I took one, kissed it, threw it in. Then this little girl started just dumping in flowers, so I went home with my brother and his girlfriend at the time, and they took me to Ritter's. It was good. I was really glad they did that, because because it had been an awful day. Once I got home, someone had brought all the flowers from the funeral and the visitation over. It was overwhelming. I don't know. Oh. Then about a week later, I went to school again. I was still numb, and everyone knew what happened. I didn't know everyone knew, though. I just remember walking in, and everyone giving me sad looks, and confused as to why I was back. And I cried the entire day. And my teachers cried, and everyone cried. I don't know. And after that, it's just a matter of getting used to the new normal. Yikes. But after that, after everything, I realized that my dad never changed. Even when I saw him, even when he was dying, he never lost his sparkle. He still laughed. He still smiled. He still made jokes. One time they were lowering his bed down, and he was just like, while we were doing it, like it was a magic trick or something. And my cousin, okay, she has really big boobs. And my dad had a tumor right here, and it was about the size of a grapefruit. Yeah. You know, he went, "Hey, I've got those too," and showed her the tumor. And I just remember everyone laughing so hard. Because this sweet little dying man was making boob jokes. He lost his battle to cancer. And thinking of those things was the moment I realized he lost his battle to cancer, but we never lost him.